When we think about anxiety, we usually picture it as this very personal, internal struggle. Kind of like a battle someone's fighting all on their own, inside their own head. But what if that's only half the story? Let's dig into how the impact of anxiety is almost never just about one person. The truth is, anxiety doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It has this ripple effect. It starts with one person, sure, but it expands outward, and it ends up touching everyone in their orbit. It's an experience that can really fundamentally reshape relationships.
And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? Think about it like dropping a stone into a pond. That first splash, that's the anxiety itself. But all those ripples that spread out across the water, that's the impact on loved ones. And honestly, those ripples deserve just as much of our attention. So, have you ever stopped to think about what these ripples actually look like in real life? How does one person's anxiety show up in the lives of the people who care about them the most? Let's break down some of the most common ways this plays out. Okay, so for a partner, a family member, or a close friend, one of the first and most powerful feelings is just helplessness. I mean, you see someone you love struggling, and your gut instinct is to jump in and fix it, right? To just make all that pain go away. Wow. And that really paints a picture, doesn't it? It's this profound sense of being powerless. You're watching this person you love go through this, but you feel like you have no tools to stop it. And that feeling, it can curdle really fast into frustration or guilt, or sometimes it even creates this emotional distance because that's the only way to cope. Another huge impact is a kind of shared isolation. Anxiety often makes people want to avoid things, big crowds, new situations, social events. But here's the thing. The person with anxiety isn't the only one who ends up feeling isolated. Before you know it, the partner or supporter starts turning down invitations too. Maybe it's out of solidarity, or maybe it's just easier that way. And slowly but surely, both of their worlds start to get smaller and smaller. It creates this quiet, shared loneliness that can really put a strain on their connection.
And it's not just the emotional side of things. The practical, day-to-day stuff can create a whole other layer of strain.
And this is where it gets really tricky. See, when one person is totally overwhelmed by anxiety, the other person naturally steps up to carry more of the weight, handling the bills, doing more chores, making all the plans. And while this totally comes from a place of love, over time, that imbalance can quietly build into resentment, and that feeling is like acid for a relationship.
I know, this all sounds pretty heavy, right? But the good news is these patterns aren't set in stone. Just understanding the problem is a massive first step toward changing it. So the real question is, how do we calm these turbulent waters and find a better, more connected way to move forward?
All right, let's get into a new approach. There are some really powerful tools and mindset shifts that can help couples and families navigate this stuff together, turning what feels like a source of strain into a real opportunity for a deeper connection.
It really boils down to three main strategies. First, and this is a big one, practicing open communication that builds bridges instead of walls. Second, consciously finding ways to share the load, both the practical stuff and the emotional stuff. And third, and this is huge, prioritizing everyone's well-being. This isn't just about managing one person's anxiety. It's about keeping the whole relationship, the whole system, healthy.
Now, just look at this. The power of a simple language shift here is incredible. Instead of saying something that sounds like an accusation, like, you never want to go out, framing it with I feel just completely changes the vibe. It opens a door for a real conversation. Why? Well, because it's not an attack. It's you being vulnerable and sharing. It's you expressing a need without blaming them, which invites empathy instead of defensiveness. You're basically saying, here's what's going on with me, instead of, here's what you're doing wrong. See the difference?
And this is absolutely critical for anyone in that support role. You have to remember, your job isn't to cure your partner's anxiety. It's to be a supportive presence. And that means you have to protect your own energy. It's so easy to fall into something called emotional mirroring, where you kind of unconsciously absorb your partner's anxious state. So you have to prioritize your own self-care. That might mean making sure you still see your friends or carving out time for a hobby you love. It is not selfish to set a boundary like, hey, I need 30 minutes to myself to decompress after work. In fact, it's essential if you want to avoid burnout and keep the relationship healthy for the long haul.
And finally, please don't forget to celebrate the small victories. And I mean really celebrate them. Maybe it was just making a phone call they'd been dreading, or trying a new coffee shop for just 5 minutes. These are not small things, they are huge steps. When you acknowledge them together, it reinforces that you're a team, that you're in this together. It builds the hope and the momentum you need to keep going, one win at a time.
Okay, so when we start to put all these pieces together, it leads to this really fundamental shift in how we look at the whole experience of anxiety inside a relationship.
So here it is, the main takeaway. We need to stop seeing anxiety as one person's isolated problem that needs to be solved. We need to start seeing it for what it is, a shared experience that affects the entire dynamic of the relationship. It's a shift from your anxiety to our challenge. And believe me, that simple reframe can change absolutely everything.
And that's the thought I really want to leave you with. How might shifting your perspective from me versus my anxiety to us versus this challenge, how might that change everything? Because when you do that, you open up all these new pathways for communication, for empathy, for real teamwork. You transform the whole dynamic from one of helplessness and isolation to one of shared understanding and mutual support.